Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Today we're back here with, actually, Jack Rackham. I know, been a while since I've done one of his videos, but I figured I'd let him build up for a bit. But anyway, today's subject is Charles I of England. So yeah, a king. And this one's titled, Why the King Can't Say No to Parliament. Parliament's a pretty big deal nowadays, but I guess back then, couldn't get all that going. But, well, we're about to see what happens when a king tells Parliament not gonna happen. Well, time to see how this goes for them, the king or otherwise. Let's hear the story of Charles. Be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Here we go.
The most interesting thing
you pretty
about
much
King
guess what's
Charles
gonna happen
I
already.
is that he was 5 foot 6 inches tall at the start of his reign,
6.
and only 4 foot 8 inches tall at the end of it.
Damn. Oh wait, I think I
Charles, my son! What is it, Charles, my father? Charles,
Wait,
it's not safe
first?
here. Run! Hide in exile in France. But there's
Second?
one problem, father. I don't speak French.
Oof.
Mon Dieu!
Ugh.
C'est tragique! Qu'est-ce que devrions-nous faire? I still
you
don't
trying
understand
anything?
what that... Ah, voilà! Babel! Si vous devez fuir le pays, Dad, you utilisez
Dude.
Babel. English? Babel is
Yeah,
the
thank
perfect
you.
app to begin your new life in exile. In just 3 weeks, Babel's bite-sized interactive lessons will have you starting to speak in your new mother tongue. And with their wide selection of games, podcasts, and more, you'll fit right in. Take in new experiences around the world. Immerse yourself in new
It's just
cultures
a
and
classic.
enjoy the simple pleasure of learning something new every day. All you have to do is click the link or scan the QR code to get 60% off. Thank you for this, Father. I'll think of you always. What about me, Papa?
Were you?
Right, you. Don't forget to wear sunscreen. The English...
Ouch. Okay. A little harsh, but I guess there's more to that. And actually, now I think about it, I think I remember this guy for a tiny bit. Because... Oh, right, there was the king... Okay, yeah, this is definitely the guy that lost his head. 1649, I think. Anyway, well, let's start this story and see how well this kid did. Well, let's go.
Parliament had been stewing in frustration with the king well before Charles ever put on a crown. His father, King James, of Bible fame, really wanted to go to war to help his family in Bohemia, but Parliament voted no.
Yeah, war's
I
too
am
expensive.
England, and if I say we're going to war, then by God, we're going to war. That's adorable. I propose a motion we stop paying taxes to the king.
Oof.
Seconded. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Of
No
course,
dice.
we might be willing to reconsider if Prince Charles marries a Protestant and England goes to war with Spain. Well, James and
Oof.
Charles thought that was a load of steaming hog bollocks. In fact, they had already made plans for Charles to marry the Spanish Infanta. So Charles made up his mind
Spanish
to
royalty,
go
by the way.
around Parliament. He and his good friend, George Villiers, Duke of Buckingham, would sneak out of the country incognito to make this marriage happen. I say, Tom, what a capital idea. Very quite, Jack. Most quite indeed. Oh, sir, deliver us to the coast, would you? Yes, your majesty. Princessa, a couple of hooligans to see you. It's me, the Prince of
It's us.
England. A couple of clean-shaven hooligans to see you.
Fanta?
Her Grace does not speak to infidels, I'm afraid. She tells me she will marry you on the condition you convert to Roman Catholicism, and you must repeal your edicts of religious discrimination.
Well?
Should you comply, you may expect to see Her Grace next
Expect?
1 year after the wedding.
Really?
We're going to war with Spain! That wasn't the deal. Trust me, it was never gonna fly. Am I right, Villiers?
He's over
Totes, your majesty. Totes.
Here we go again.
But war with Spain is expensive!
Just the whole curry crying.
Then why did you ask for it? Charles and Villiers had the crybaby treasurer impeached. Impeachment had only happened once recently, and James warned the boys that they would regret giving Parliament such a powerful tool to deal with their enemies. For the moment, though, they had a little win.
Probably should have
Parliament
gone with
tossed just
English,
enough money to the king to send
Or
one
French.
spunky mercenary captain and a gaggle of ruffians to go fight for Bohemia. They made it as far as the Netherlands. But that's okay. After all, Parliament had already approved the war, so Charles, now king, calls Parliament together the next year and says, "Hey, things didn't go quite as planned, so let's talk about our budget this year. Actually, let's talk about your wife." Charles had given up on the Spanish Infanta and married a French woman. Problem is, the French, also Catholic. And part of the deal to get that dowry money was that Charles had to punish Catholics in England a little bit less for being Catholics, which did not fly in Parliament.
Don't think I would last so long in his
reign. If
reign.
you want the rights to import and export taxes, you're going to have to call us again next year, because we're only going to lend you those rights. And another thing, ditch Villiers. The man's a clown. Villiers acted on my orders. If you've got a problem with him, you've got a problem with me, muchacho. Too bad you can't impeach a king. Ha! Checkmate, dweebs! Your Majesty, I've heard enough. Parliament is hereby dissolved.
Wow.
Charles chalks up all the drama to some bad apples.
Boy.
So he does
What
a
did
little
Villiers do?
election tampering. He makes sure that all those troublemakers are elected county sheriff, and sheriffs aren't allowed to leave their county to come to London and participate in Parliament. With that business squared away, he calls Parliament the following year. "We're not giving you more money." "What? Why?" "Because last time you gave it to this bozo and he spent £250,000 to get 5,400 sailors drunk in Cadiz Harbor." Come
Really?
on, you had to be there.
Jeez.
He's gotta go. All in favor of impeachment? Dismissed. You're all dismissed. Parliament over. Appreciate it, man. I got you, bro. Charles looks
250,000 pounds back then. That's gotta be a lot of money. You know? I mean, considering the king has to keep going to Parliament to get the money, like, you think he would have told Villiers, "Yo, dude, shape up. What are you doing? You're making me look bad." Like, I know it's not what he actually said, but come on, you can imagine it, right? Ay, ay, ay. Honestly, if I was the king, I think I would have told you, "Look, okay, I'll get rid of him. Billiards, you're out. Sorry, bro, but I mean, seriously, $50,000 to get sailors drunk. What the hell are you doing, bro? Anyway,
for new ways to get money, and he comes up with loans. Kind of like government-issued war bonds in a way, but if you don't buy them, you get thrown in prison without trial. Charles racks up a bunch of cash, gives it to Villiers, sends him to France, and it's gone. It's all gone. Villiers failed miserably.
God damn it,
Where did that
Villiers.
send Charles? Right
back to Parliament.
Of course we'll give you the money, on the condition you never go behind our backs again. And stop taking our stuff! Yeah, no
And
more
get rid of
taking our stuff and
Villiers.
throwing us in jail. Okay. And for God's sake, get rid of Villiers. Never! Petition of right. More like petition of fright. Am I right, Villiers? Up high! George Villiers was stabbed to death that year by a
There you
man
go.
who'd been passed up for a promotion and was tired of watching George screw up without reprisal.
Thank
The next
you.
thing Parliament
See you,
wanted to
Villiers.
do was discuss import-export taxes and how Charles was sort of going around Parliament's backs again, and Charles snapped Parliament out of existence for 11 years and arrested
Bro.
9 MPs. Charles was determined to make it in the world all on his own, even if he had to use every loophole in the book. This time, he banked on ship money. You see, back in the old days, before England had a standing navy, the king used to order seaside towns to build ships for war. Or they could give him money instead. Sure, in 1634,
So,
England
tax?
wasn't under any immediate threat, but you never know what could happen, and technically,
Okay,
a
1634.
levy for national defense was not a tax, which meant he was in the clear. King Charles was happy as a clam. He could finally
now.
turn England into his own personal autocracy. There was just one problem.
And here we go.
Religion. You see, when James
Christians
VI
again.
of Scotland became James I of England and inherited
Okay.
not only a
His
kingdom,
dad.
but an entire religion whose doctrine made him the infallible supreme leader, well, he thought the Scots really ought to give this whole Anglicanism thing a try, but he'd have to take it slow. Charles now was
Okay.
just delivering on some of the patch notes to Christianity that James had promised, but the Scots weren't happy. They hated the church hierarchy being led by bishops, who they saw as a bunch of stooges appointed by the king, and when the king handed down a new prayer book with new religious doctrines, they rioted.
So
The
a
Scottish
Scottish rebellion.
Parliament
Got
and
it.
the Scottish Church's Parliament both signed a covenant saying no one was allowed to change Scotland's religion without going through them. Charles
Oh,
can't
boy.
abide lest the Puritans in England get any ideas, the bunch of weirdos, and that means
Hello,
war.
the English
And
schism.
war means money.
Parliaments.
Oh, sure, he fought with his own money for a while, but any chance to end the war quickly left when the Scots tricked him into thinking their army was 10 sizes too big. So the only solution was Parliament.
Yep.
Look, calling
And
a
we're
parliament
back.
in the first place, that's a pretty big concession. So let's give a big hip hip hurrah for England and save our grievances for later, huh? But by now, Parliament
Yeah.
had a long list of grievances. Charles says he'll give up ship money in exchange for a grant. Parliament says, now see here,
Oh,
not
come
again.
on.
Then realized, oh right, he still had to fight a war in Scotland, and he called Parliament again. Now see here.
Don't
you
do
can't
that.
go around dissolving us like that. It really messes with your head. Parliament can be dissolved only with consent by Parliament, and must hereafter meet at least once every 3 years at a minimum, and no more spontaneous arrests. Parliament
Please, stop.
arrests Charles' advisors, claiming they were inspiring the king to do evil and trying to maintain the delicate film of polite incredulity that the real problem
let's
was
see how
the
long
king.
that's gonna last.
That is, if the king would just play along. Furthermore, they arrest his deputy in Ireland, meaning there will be no absolute monarchy anywhere in the
Yet.
British Isles. And also the Scottish win the war anyway. Without the Lord Deputy of Ireland's boots on the ground, Ireland rebels. Charles and Parliament both
Yep,
agree
from
somebody
Scots to
should
Irish.
do something about that, but neither one of them is willing to raise an army if the other one is going to lead it. Parliament then
boy.
does a whole bunch of spring cleaning, kicking out all their bishops, giving themselves the right to veto the king's cabinet, and King Charles puts his foot down. King Charles, you can't be in here. The other scenes were for the sake of simplicity. The king has never set foot in the House of Commons for the
Well, now
sake
I
of
have.
law and order. Ha! You're not going to believe this. Here's law and here's order. They just want to have a little chat with the
ya.
men who are leading all of this. Bring me John Hampton, Arthur Hasselrig, John Pym, and the rest of those empty seats.
Oh,
Where
Are
are
they?
they? May it please your majesty, I saw what Parliament says I saw, and I'll tell you what Parliament says I'll tell you. It's not
Oh,
quite
boy.
as intense a moment as I was led to believe by the scene with Obi-Wan Kenobi that made me choose this topic in the first place, but it's clear things are headed in the direction of war. Charles moves his
Yep.
family out of
did
London.
I say
Parliament
Cromwell in
delivers
there?
their demands. Charles moves across the country to gather weapons and soldiers until... No!
no.
No! No! You can't come in!
Yikes.
Hombre, I am your king. Oh, tough nuggies, innit? Charles orders the man to be arrested
you.
as a traitor, but what's he gonna do about it? He lays siege to the town, and the English Civil War has officially begun. A general layout
Ain't
of
coming.
the war for you. Parliament's got the south, the east, and the big cities. Charles has got the north, the Wales, and the countryside. Scotland supports Parliament on the condition that England become Presbyterian. The Irish supported Charles, believing he'd be more receptive to a pro-Catholic Ireland. Charles has a good opportunity to defeat a major parliamentarian army, but instead of speeding towards London, he stops to violently sack a city or two along the way, giving the parliamentarian army enough time to make it to London first and warn everyone about the horrible things this king is going to do to everybody in town if Parliament loses. Not to mention he's allied with the scary Irish Catholics! Charles makes his own parliament in Oxford. It doesn't do much. The London Parliament decides they're not very good at running an army, actually, and creates the new model army, led by army men who are not allowed to be in government, and vice versa. Except for...
Oh, here it comes.
England, Cromwell, Lord Protector of England.
Maybe next time. The parliamentarians
Game Python,
split their
thank you.
forces. It doesn't work. Charles splits his forces. It doesn't work. Charles is outmatched and he surrenders, but pointedly, he surrenders to the Scots. He
Oh.
shows up in their camp
Oh.
and they go, "Oh my God, King Charles, how did you get here? What a surprise!" But they knew. They knew exactly why he was there. He was there to make a deal. They say, some time ago, an
Yeah?
envoy from France planted in us an idea to make a separate peace with the king. Worst kept secret in Britain, amigo.
Everyone
Yes,
knew.
thank you. Of course, his idea was to drive a wedge between Scotland and England and one day reignite
comes
the
the
old
political
alliance
backdooring.
between France and Scotland. So why should I agree with him? It so happens, some folks in England are of the idea that there shouldn't be an official state religion, and we should all be welcome to worship as we please. Bunch of pillocks. Frankly, we could give a hoot about all the duties and taxes and privileges and whatever it is they're so upset about in London. Make Presbyterianism the state religion in England and Scotland, and we will fight for you to be on the throne. I think you mean to say you couldn't give a hoot. Oh my God! Charles reasoned that in peacetime, men are led from the pulpit more than by the sword, and if the church doesn't have him as its supreme leader, then maybe people might start to question giving all the power in the country to a singular man. So he said no. The Scots didn't really know what to do with him, so they sold him to the English. It was true, though, what he said about different people having different ideas about religion. Divisions were already starting to form among the revolutionaries. It's very easy to unite in order to oppose something. It's a lot more difficult to decide who or what gets to replace it. In England, Parliament was torn between the Presbyterians, who, again, anti-bishop, and the Independents, who wanted no state religion. The army, by this point, was quickly becoming a political faction all its own, mostly independent. But then the army elected a bunch of representatives to go to Parliament to present their grievances, to which Parliament rolled its eyes and said the army would be paid, you know, eventually. And then within the army, the rank-and-file soldiers were degrees more radical than their superior officers. Charles was playing the waiting game. The Independents will fight the Presbyterians, and then the Scots will fight the English, and Parliament will fight the army, and the army will fight itself, and they'll all realize how badly they need their king, their Leviathan. Problem is, someone has to be in charge in order to negotiate with Charles. Charles' fate depends on who wins, and oftentimes, that's not the moderates. The army steals Charles away from the Parliament and tries to negotiate with him, but Charles isn't ready to pick a side just yet. The Scottish and English Presbyterians are getting antsy because they don't like the army getting all political. They say, hey, Charles, would you just try Presbyterianism for 3 years? Just try it, you'll like it. And Charles says, yes, it's Civil War time, baby. The Scottish and the Presbyterians were not the right choice. The Second Civil War goes very badly for Charles and friends. He's taken back to England to continue negotiating with Parliament because, well, he's the king. Still the king, Parliament's gotta negotiate with him. But the army is done playing this game. Colonel Thomas Pride walks into Parliament, refuses to let anyone in who isn't on the side of the army, and arrests another 45 MPs. You're no better than King Charles! You can't do that! Or what? You're gonna start a civil war against the army? Of 470 members in total, they just did kick your butt. Are present for the vote when they declare that England will not be negotiating with Charles. What's left of the House of Commons passes an act formally accusing Charles of treason. It fails in the House of Lords. Sod the sodding lords! I'll sod them in the sod! Sir? Dissolve them! Abolish them if you have to! Just get me that trial! 3 Chief Justices find it unlawful. We hereby create the law that says we can try the sodding king! How do you plead? To what? Treason against myself? Am I right, Villiers?
There's no Villiers.
Oh, that's a confession to me. To the Axeman! They actually recorded that as a confession, and then continued to call witnesses just to get everyone hyped for the verdict. Out of 135 judges specifically chosen for the trial, about half actually showed up and declared him guilty. Charles was a little flabbergasted, but surprisingly chill. He asked for an extra shirt so he wouldn't shiver in the cold and let people think he didn't want to die. Embarrassing. And other than that, you know, he dug his feet in the sand all his life, but once he saw the end, he was totally at peace. Guilty of all the treasons, murders, rapines. How about that, huh? I know, dude. Wild. See you in heaven, though?
Let's see.
Is my hair good? Yeah, man, you're good.
Nice hat.
Fair enough. All right, on my signal.
Here we go.
Later
suckers. Can you imagine just being up there, just chilling, and just, you know, like, just gotta wait. Okay, bye suckers, you'll regret this. Can you imagine that? Just being as chill as Charles, like, on the execution stand. I don't think I could pull that off. Could you guys? Let me know And if so, you're a brave man than I am. Anyway, till next time, I'll see you for the next history lesson. Good night, everybody.